Apple Desktop Publishing. For graphics professionals. New products developed for the Macintosh are revolutionizing the graphic arts business. Tools which were initially developed for desktop publishing have been significantly refined. Designers who have discovered these tools are redefining the potential of Apple Desktop Publishing.
Desktop publishing isn't just for some little 4-page black and white newsletter, that in fact it can be a very sophisticated tool that can be used.
This next generation that's starting to appear of all these new programs are now allowing you to do things that used to cost you a fortune to have done with cameras and lenses at stat houses, like type modification.
And that's what's exciting to the designers, I think, is the fact that they can do all these things right at the end of a fingertip. And I think it's, great for them.
As a tool in the hands of a professional designer, I think it actually gives them more creativity. It doesn't make them better designer if they're not a good designer, but what it does do is expand their abilities to test and try concepts.
Nobody really cares about desktop processing and computers and all the little buzzwords that are used in the industry. All anybody really wants to know is, what can this thing do for me? What's it going to do to make my life easier? How's it going to save me time? How's it going to save me money?
Gibbs Balkand and Associates of New York City has a network of 35 Macintoshes, along with an Apple Share file server, 6 laser writers, and a Linotronic. The Macintosh assists GBA in reducing costs, improving productivity, and achieving consistent, high-quality results.
Every bit of production on this particular magazine was done in the Macintosh. All holding lines, all the typography, everything other than art and a few headlines was done directly on the Macintosh. Every head and every subhead was put in place. Photographs were scanned in for placement and then taken out before final output with the holding lines left in place for the printer. What that achieves is less post-production work or less hand work. Once the design is brought into the company via modem or either typed in to the computer, it's put on central filing where account execs can go back and look at their work, the copy, and page layout people can get the copy and pour it into a layout. Before they can pour it into a layout, obviously they work with the designers in the group, and some of the designers are at a point where they can lay out their own boards on the screen. So once a designer has designed his piece on tissue and gotten his measurements ready, it's usually given to page layout, and they go ahead and put the boards together on the screen, putting in margins and holding lines and things that are appropriate for that particular layout.
The text is then run out in galley form to be sent via fax, modem, or mail for review by the client. In addition to checking content, the copy can be evaluated for length. After several review cycles, the text is proofed and then checked by a program which assures consistent hyphenation and quote marks.
By this time, the designer has laid in a few more things or conversed with the page layout person and put a few more things into the designs, such as heads and subheads. And the piece is actually starting to take shape on the screen, and they're working toward a mechanical at all times. Once the blue line has been put onto the boards on the screen, things just keep on building and building. It could be a rough after maybe a week and a half of the process, and after 2 or 3 weeks it may be a comp where the designer would lay in some color work onto the page layout that's output on the laser writer. And finally, when everything comes together, we've gotten all the revisions made and everybody's happy with the design, we put it out on the Linotronic with everything in place. The only thing that we leave out are color photos, but we do put in holding lines for the printer, so the stripping process becomes a lot simpler. We're hoping that we can always save money in those areas because we're doing so much more. A lot less overlays, less use of things like Ruby Lith and things that were traditionally used for stripping in photos. So the process has been made much more efficient by the Macintosh. It's a piece that they would never know the difference between that piece and a piece that was put together in a traditional studio with traditional methods.
Prior to installing the Macintosh network, GBA spent over $250,000 a year on typesetting alone.
The typographic refinements that have finally been put into the page layout programs that are available on the Mac are as fine as any dedicated $50,000 to $100,000 system. The kerning has been more refined. The type has obviously been more refined. The typefaces being used are ITC and Mergenthaler now, which are two of the most famous and most used typeface libraries in the world.
And when you do a presentation to a client, one of the things that they like the best is how you can change the type so quickly, and how you can, you know, wrap the images and change the scaling. They just really cannot believe it.
When the Associated Press graphics department sought a system capable of quickly creating maps and other graphics, they chose the Macintosh. The easy-to-learn features of the Mac led to rapid adoption by many of the 1,600 member newspapers.
Every newspaper wants to look like it's rich enough to have a fancy art department.
And we create all those graphics on Macintosh computers, and we distribute those on a Macintosh-based network to the AP audience of newspapers. We brought Macintoshes in here a year ago last month, and basically in a 2-week time period went from no computers to totally producing our product on the Macintosh. And very often our deadline is an ASAP kind of thing, like where the hell is it 5 minutes after something happens.
Here it's literally can be done in 5 minutes. You just pull up a base map, locate the city, print it out on the laser writer, and it's done. It's so simple. We have probably, oh God, much more than quadrupled our production, much more than that.
We're not constantly reinventing the wheel. It's a question of accessing it off our file server, and we have it to work with right away. In the past, that would have meant tracing off an atlas again, or at least utilizing photostats or restatting something, which usually wasn't the right size or just the right configuration. But the computer allows us to do that very easily. So there's been a big savings in that regard. Being able to incorporate our DEC system, our VAXs, with our Macintosh capability opens up new possibilities in what we can do and what we might attempt to do. So we're very interested in what is going to develop in that area. And I think the newspaper industry as a whole is very interested.
J.S. Mandel & Company is a package design firm serving Fortune 500 clients. Their package designers appreciate the ability the Macintosh gives them to explore creative options within a very tight time frame.
One of the key things is time. You know, how fast they have a new product or a product line extension or something like that, and a package they want to get to market as fast as possible.
Prior to the computer type system, or way we're doing it now, we would do our marker sketches and have to go back and make the revisions, and when we came back, then represent them to the client and go again. So there could be a time lapse. That, with a computer though, now we can actually go and show them the designs. They can ask the questions, what if? We can show them the modifications, and there's greater involvement by the client.
And you can try different things. You can take chances and change the whole composition of a piece, and then press a button, and it is right back to where you had it before.
At J.S. Mandel, they perform nearly every step of the design and production process on the Macintosh. And with the introduction of color printers, their client presentations can have a finished appearance.
We found the immediate possibility with the Macintosh, and could we really do full mechanicals, could we really do full production, and continue our design into the production phase. As we were doing production, the design continued to be able to be finalized, refined, so it was real exciting.
And with the printer, the color printer, it's enabling you to get, for the first time, color hard copy. And you can show this to their client, and now a graphic office can be everything, from typesetter to pre-press to pressman.
Since we started as a company getting involved in computer technology, it was just to do logos at the outset. Then it became a way of doing typesetting more economically. Now we do 98% of all our final artwork via the Macintosh system.
David Smith is an independent designer, specializing in logo design and corporate identity work. He was drawn to the Macintosh as an illustration tool and has come to value the creative control and self-sufficiency it offers.
To run a successful business without the Macintosh would be impossible and be home. I would have to be much closer to sources like stat houses and type houses. I rarely ever need them with the Macintosh. And what I do is I usually go into a drawing program. I don't go into Paint or Draw. I usually, these days, go into Illustrator. I have abilities then to rotate and skew text and objects. I can size anything I want, you know, on the laser writer and in any program. And in some programs, I even outdo the stat houses, you know, because they can't do what I can do because of the computer.
David Smith used the Macintosh throughout the process of creating a logo for the Heart Institute of California.
They came in and up on the wall were 24 marks, possibilities for marks. They all were smooth and clean. There was nothing that people had to adjust to when they looked at them. It was amazing. I've never seen a client who wasn't visually trained so clearly respond to what he liked and didn't like. And I know it's because they were all equal in their presentation. And it really made his job easier. It made my job easier. I had no outside charges, number one. Think about that. No stat charges for the presentation, no type charges. I had nothing. And it's funny, mine was never as successful at what I'm doing until this computer entered the picture. As a designer, I had a lot of clients and I had a lot of business. But it was much more strenuous. So as a design tool, it makes my business possible.
As a tool in the hands of designers, new desktop publishing software designed for the Macintosh is making important contributions to the graphics business. These people are redefining the potential of Apple desktop publishing.
You know, newspapers were looking for a solution. They went to the shelf, and lo and behold, they discovered something that would work for them.
And when the clients come in and see what we can do and see how the type flows on the screen and what kind of product we get, see the turnaround time, they don't have a problem with what machine is used. They're happy with what they see.
It's like, God, I didn't know a Macintosh could do all that, or a Mac 2 could do all that.
Every single day we come down here and work with it, you know, 10 and 12 hours a day, and we still get extremely excited about it. So, you know, you can imagine somebody that wants to output something, and wants to produce something, and sees a computer and finally sees a tool that can fulfill that need very, very simply.
Therefore, it makes sense to embrace the technology now and learn how to use these tools, because every day you don't use it, it's a day that you have to do it the old way, which may be slower or more time-consuming.
It's available. It can do a job for you today. You don't have to wait 2 or 3 more years, where 2 or 3 years ago you really had to be a die-hard fan to go out and buy the equipment and really sit there and work. But now it's there.
My feeling really is if you don't do it now, you're going to be left behind.